May 2nd, 2022. Make sure to go to my official YouTube channel to subscribe. Of course, this video is a part of my official YouTube channel videos. Like and share the link to my official YouTube videos. And go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. So I haven't hidden who I am. I know that there have been certain situations regarding the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training. And while I was hesitant to be a part of the online social media for a lot of reasons, I didn't have much of a positive viewpoint because of my childhood. It's not necessarily that I didn't believe that there could be good people online. That wasn't it at all. It was because I was born and raised in New Jersey in the 1980s and 1990s. I had watched as things had developed in the 1980s and 1990s, and where I could see certain things that I made attempts to bring forward to understand, individuals thought what they thought. And so my books that I published, all of them together, as you can see on the homepage of my website, www.susanmealing.com, not only have I been capable to distinguish, obviously, from my writings and compilations, the difference of my facts compared to my fiction writings, I had already clarified in my journal blog, the ornery PSA on my website, www.susanmealing.com, in the year of 2004, I had discussed creating books in a series in spirituality and religion. Having been an ordained reverend, my books that I authored and compiled, all of them, by the legal standards, are a religion. And so each aspect that I already brought forward before today, the 2nd of May, 2022, as to those facts, that's what I brought forward back in 2004, and did the updates through my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com. So legally, my constitutional rights to freedom of religion, and since there are many that have been formed, the facts are as the facts are. And so in the Bible, you have the Old Testament, which I have gone over in prior official YouTube videos of mine on my official YouTube channel, but also in writing. In my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com. And in the New Testament, there are many parables. Those who I have spoken with and or have read my writings, there are these specific words that are in the Bible, such as proverbial or parable. That's what that translates to. Metaphorical references. So those are protection rights in the Constitution of the United States of America. And because of the facts as to the constitutional rights and amendments of the United States of America, and how I have made every attempt to ensure that I abide by and live by the 10 Commandments, and have even preached in a multitude of locations. You can even see in reference to the stories or parables of Jesus in the Old Testament, dining with sinners, as far as that's concerned, whether tax collectors or sort of way, I had made attempts in the city of San Antonio to create this group. I had deemed the name WHIPS. And the only way that that group would ever be allowed to flourish was only if it began with my tenets. Because any other way, it would not flourish correctly because of the actualities of intent. And so any aspect of would be considered problematic. It'd also be against religion and those particulars. That's why for decades I've said I'm more eclectic, because I have studied as much as I have. So this is why I have sent books and different references, as well as letters where I know that there are the aspects of different religions. I have acknowledged to having studied in those references. And so in a more updated sort of way, bringing that forward so that way, similarly to how I've studied books, as to that eclectic aspect, because of. And so, but it's still mine. It's always been mine, because it's my work, it's my life, it's my experiences. So there are these people that I knew in the state of Texas, and I had been online on and off, because I really, and you can see this in reference to when certain things need to be taken care of, I tend to back away from the online stuff. I don't really mind it so much. It's just every now and then whether the pain levels that I have to kind of mitigate myself through, such as zapping, for an example, or what's going on as far as certain time frames. I don't have the same viewpoint that some people do. And in this reference, there were these people, and it was only in the DFW area, which confused me, because I had begun in the San Antonio area, and in the San Antonio area, well, they also didn't have this group there. And so it was more BDSM education, they had munches, but it was a lot of classes and demos, where the high amount of educational value in those regards. In the BDSM, where it's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, whereas in reference to the swinging lifestyle, there weren't, and it is true, I'm sure that even Steve and Krista from Temple of Flesh, they could see the aspects of, because depending on how the viewpoint regarding the swinging lifestyle, because I'm going to guesstimate, because I wasn't alive during the starting point when it was more, well, I should say the modernized starting point compared to the reality. However, in regards of in the 1960s and 1970s, the known factors of the sexual revolution in certain regards, and so the swinging aspects were more prevalent. I'm sure there have to be some references that would be capable to go into that a little bit more so. And while the modernized scientific portions weren't as well known, so preventative measures to keep and maintain, to sustain the health and wellness of each individual wasn't as predominant, because it wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that situation had become more well known. And so, and having been born and raised in New Jersey, and grown up going to New York City especially, and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania for those references, there were a lot of people that I personally lost. And so where there are other factors of certain things that are treatable at the time frame fortunately, for those that I have known, they were, it went as it had. And so, and that was obviously before 1993. And so this is a big aspect in regards of not just when in the state of Texas, though even in my basic training. So in my basic training, before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, I have memories of my basic training. I was told I was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, though I have discussed as well as written about how the first few days were. And I'm going to guesstimate in certain references, aside from my coma and aside from the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain that took 8.5 years to fully dissipate out of the MRI and CAT scans, I'm going to guesstimate that maybe not, as to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I don't actually know. I know that before I left for Fort Sill, or, well, I should say basic training, I know that the flight was specifically from Chicago to Oklahoma City. However, as I've explained as well as written about in my first book, Finding a Silver Lining, you can go to my website, www.susanhealing.com, in the book section, as far as the Amazon links, we were all given sandwiches. And all of the sandwiches that everybody was given was like a hoagie, for those who know what hoagie bread looks as. And it had ham and turkey, if I remember correctly, and there was a little bit of mayonnaise on it. But everybody had these little packets, as far as if you wanted to add ketchup or mustard or Tabasco sauce. And then we were given a bag of chips and a drink. Like, not Capri Sun or Juicy Juice, but kind of like one of those, for those who know those references. And then we got on the bus. And I knew that it was only supposed to be at most 2 or 3 hours for the drive. And we arrived around 11 or 1 o'clock. We left Chicago, if I remember, around 10:30 or 11 a.m. So we arrived as to what I thought was Oklahoma at 1, I think 1:30 or 13:30 for the afternoon time. When the bus pulled in, it was almost midnight when we were taken into that room after we got off of the bus. Everybody had fallen asleep. I do remember actually seeing everybody we had actually been in our PT gear when we left. When we arrived on the bus, everybody was in BDUs. And I had asked about it when on the bus, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Everybody thought whatever they thought, and I was confused. And since nobody had actually gotten to meet one another or be introduced to one another, there just wasn't that. It was very confusing. And so as we pulled in, I remember seeing a sign that I thought said Fort Sill, though I've been to Fort Sill, Oklahoma since. And nothing from just the entrance area reminds me. And granted, that wasn't until 2002, possibly, having seen the entrance area, and that is after the attacks on 11 September in 2001, though I don't know where, because it was as it was. And it's something I have wondered about, though didn't really put much thought behind it because of everything else that I was dealing with at the time. And so, but I did remember in basic training this huge, the projection screen. You know, for those who remember in the 1980s and 1990s, that pulling cord with the black line, and then you pull it down and it's a white projection screen. And the old-timey sort of projection monitor of the kind of white-gray box with the little black circle. I remember that. And it had gone over the details as far as sexual health and wellness. And having been born and raised in New Jersey, and having grown up going around the tri-state area, it was heavy. A lot to deal with. So fast forward, and I'm in the state of Texas, and in 2004 and 2005, officially get involved in a biological adult in comparison to when I was a child and a teenager. And a very different capacity, because as a child and a teenager walking around in the boroughs, you don't have the same fully, of course, especially in reference to the classes and the demos and the books and these different interactions, especially because of being a biological adult. So as time went on, fast forward when I'm in scuba diving and earning my 26 scuba diving certifications, any female biologically that I had met, there were some that I got along with, and then there were the recreational ones, where it was however many of that guy having brought into scuba diving, however many in that type of capacity. There were female instructors, but they had a different, in certain references, in comparison to males, and the males in the general aspect were just, it really was, where it's like, they brought these females into scuba diving. And I had issues, mainly because those types of females seemed very catty. I didn't have time for that, I didn't have patience for that, and a lot came out of that scuba toy group in comparison to international scuba. I dealt with that a lot. I actually have explained as to how my first and only time in that, there were 2 times in that shop. One was the first time, the second time was when I asked about Flower Mound. And so, because Patty Stewart had said she wasn't really comfortable with me going to the Flower Mound area, she didn't tell me why. And so I went to Scuba Toys to ask why, what it was, because it didn't make sense to me that I could go to Cancun, Cozumel, and not have any issues, but Flower Mound in the Gulf of Mexico? Really? Hey, you know, and because it wasn't really discussed, and because I am as I am, well, if you're not going to tell me, I'm going to find out myself. So you can either tell me, or I'm going to go find out myself. It's better if you just tell me. And so it was after I had, if I remember correctly, it was after I had landed at the bottom of the ocean and surfaced alive in regards to the Vandenberg, because I had my opinions as far as I wanted to make sure I had taken care of everything, and it came to a few situations regarding my work. And so I walked into Scuba Toys remembering the prior time or whatever, and it was as it was, and I walked in, and I saw a shadow run into this little area, and I was like, what did I just see? And so I walk in, and this guy's all, may I help you? And it's like, yeah, do you guys do the Flower Mound thing? And mind you, if I remember correctly, this is the same male who had asked in reference to whose account, and it's like, no. My scuba diving is my scuba diving, not associated with an account. Because being a sponsor in the Blue ID card way, you know, there are those who understand this particular reference, you know, especially regarding females. Okay, I didn't graduate basic training. I haven't denied that. However, there are females who understand they cannot stand the army brat comment. That's an instant excuse you. So, you know, one of those, for those who actually understand that. And then secondly, it's one of those, I have earned at that point 20, actually I think I had earned my 26th scuba diving certification by that point. I think it was the beginning of October, and it was like, really? Do you know who I am? Really? I landed, and it's one of those, like, let me get all, for those who have claimed they know how people are from New Jersey. let me get all like four of the five boroughs as far as New York City. Excuse me? Oh no, you did. No. The equivalent of, excuse me, do you know who I am? No. Let me make sure I take off my bracelets too, because I don't want any of that to, you know, those are, got some thin chains on, gotta take those off. Don't want to, no, not those jewelry. No. For those who understand that. And so, I landed at the bottom of the ocean. Why are you gonna puff up like that? Please. Puff it up to the wrong one. Especially when it comes to a female. Just say it. So just as a quick pause, real quick, in my thoughts, you know, I can almost envision hearing, I think it's Jay-Z, was it, females dust your shoulders off, you could be pimps too, sort of thing. And so, so, you know, this guy, he's got this, like, puffy chest, and it's like, yeah, okay, you know, I mean, compared to what I've seen in the ocean and handled as a child, like, by the time I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, you're tiny, boy. But okay, you know, I just gotta be a little, you know, so it's the state of Texas, and they have a football team. And, you know, I have to acknowledge I've been listening to a little bit of Kid Rock, you know, so I'm gonna be a cowboy. But I'm a female, so, you know. So. I'm gonna be a cowboy, baby, because you're gonna be a baby if I, you know, have to. I will show you how much of a baby you can be. You got no idea. From New Jersey. And so, let me show you what a binky is. You know, so, yeah, this guy's all, well, I don't know if you could really handle the water in the flower mound area. Why? Like, literally have landed at the bottom of the ocean and surfaced alive in the abyss trench. And so unless there's some sort of euphemism that I don't know about, that's something that scuba divers, as far as the generalized area, that is something you need to take into consideration. Because I don't know about those particular factors. If there are certain underground whatever to take in consideration as far as that's concerned, because I don't know if that's something that, I don't know, I really don't, I have no idea as far as that's concerned at all. So that's something that people who have been to those areas would be capable to figure out as far as how that goes. And so, you know, because I know there is the example, so when I had come back from Cozumel, or Cancun, I had my underwater I said, yeah, I went to Cozumel. And he said, who did you go with? Why does that matter? And so I told him all this stuff, and he was like, so... And he got a little pouty. He got a little pouty. I mean, it was cute, but he got pouty. And so I told him about what occurred, and he was just, you just go do your homework. And it's like, what is your problem? He's like, nope, you had, and I told him I didn't even want to go there. I didn't want to go to Cozumel. I wanted to go out off the coast of California. In comparison, and he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I wanted to go out into the Catalina Islands, but there was a situation because I wanted to do that as my first oceanic scuba dive before going out to the Vandenberg. He was like, really? And I was like, yeah. I argued with Patty over that, but because of Jeff Waters and that whole thing, and he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah, no, I wanted to do this, and he's like, well, you still have your homework to go do. Well, whatever, fine, I'll go do my homework. And then, the whole thing where he was like, and I thought when it came to the underwater videography for that clarification, that it was one of those, and I was just going to go learn how to hold a camera. Similarly in reference to underwater photography and how to maintain buoyancy. And he was like, no, you're going to go make a movie. And I was like, oh. And because he was being, not bratty, but kind of, and it's like, you just go do your homework. Well, fine, I'm going to make a movie then. And he was like, you go make a movie. I'll go make a movie. And so he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, well, what type of movie? I'm going to make a movie that'll make you cry. And he's, oh, you think you can make a movie that would make me cry? And he went on this whole little tirade about how he's seen every type of movie. I was like, you don't know. I can totally be all creative and stuff. And oh, that's great words. Yeah, well, you know what? I can. I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to make you cry like a girl. And he was, oh, you can't do anything. This, that, and I said, did you just throw salt on the ground? He was like, what? I'm like, haven't you ever seen the Cosby Show episode where the guy is at the tap dancing thing? And there's the song that goes, shalosh. And he's like, what? Yeah, shalosh. He's like, what? Well, you've seen, whatever, fine. I'm going to go do my homework and I'm going to make you cry like a girl. Yeah, and you're going to be all mushy inside? You're going to be a mushy. And he was like, I'm going to be a what? You're going to be a mushy. You're going to be a total mushy. And he's like, what did you... Good, I'm going to totally do it, and then you're just going to be all... What's going to happen? Now, mind you, in comparison to what outfit I am wearing now, I had my Farmer John wetsuit on, and the shorty that was tied around my waist, so, I was more, to a degree as far as my outfit. And so, yeah. So it was one of those, had, no, I wasn't strapped at that moment, so, it was as it was. Though I did in a little bit, but anyway, so, it was one of those, I'm gonna make you cry like a girl. And be all girly cry, you're gonna be all snap, what you gonna do? And so that was the underwater wedding video that I had created and stuff like that because, I came up with the idea long ago as far as a few things, and so, he had seen it, he was like, you need to edit the video, you just look at my homework. He was like, oh, you're just gonna go do homework. Yeah, I totally did my homework. I don't need to edit anything. And so he took a look at it and closed his laptop. Not gonna say you did your only just for clarifications. I didn't ever actually have that happen. So it was just, I thought that that would be, because I thought that that would be, whatever. Anyway, so he got all mushy. Which now, in 2022, if I remember correctly, there's Mulan, and I think there is a character named Mushy. Or is it Mushi? I don't know. Now, I realize this. That is funny, though. And so, he got all mushy. And so, anyway, so, but the females, in a generalized way, it was kind of weird. Because if they were not an instructor, they had a different sort of weird personality compared to the female instructors, and even then it was kind of, there were some similarities. It was really odd. It was extremely odd, and I couldn't pick up what it was. It was just one of those, I don't feel like dealing with that. That's just, I just don't have the patience for that. I don't know what the issue is, and so the males would kind of, I don't want to say they were kind of brutish, but they kind of were. And then, some of the females, it was one of those, I don't know, especially with the males that brought more females in, which it translates to what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle. So in the consenting adult lifestyle, it's different because depending on who you are and how you are, depends on how you maneuver through the lifestyle. So I didn't get I officially wasn't ever introduced to what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle by anyone that I knew in the state of Texas, because you have to take in consideration having been born and raised in New Jersey and going around the tri-state area, and with the fact that my biological father had been certified by the School of Bolova, and it was the 1980s at that time. Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and Harlem as well, different, whatever, but nonetheless, and then Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So, I was aware. I was extremely aware. And of the varying levels, as I've already explained in prior official YouTube videos of mine. And I knew a lot of the intricacies. I mean, a lot more than I've gone into regarding whether it's my journal blog, the ornery PSA on my website, www.susameling.com, far more than any of my prior official YouTube videos. Again, please like and share the link to my official YouTube videos as far as my official YouTube channel, and quite a lot more. And so I knew a lot so I knew more about the relationship aspects and the intricacies of, well before what is considered gender studies and relationship counseling in those capacities. I knew about that as a child. I mean, again, it was the 1980s. What decade was before the 1980s in reference to this lecture? It's the 1970s. And so I had a larger understanding and comprehension of the various levels of. This is why I consider myself a pansexual polyamorous. That's just how it is, because of the identifying personality traits. So that's where, because of being a tomboy, but a biological female, and those different references. So that sort of stuff, I had all sorts of words for. The actual properness in reference to the different tools or the weapons, however you choose to look at it. I called them tools because of knowing that they are tools. They can be used as weapons, but they are tools if used in a specific capacity. If in a different capacity, in my opinion, then they can be considered as weapons, but that is in a different reference. And so I've made sure to maintain only in the tool aspect because I actually gave a lecture in person, face-to-face in person in San Antonio, and actually had explained that part, where, while some of these can be considered as, if it is utilized in a certain capacity, it depends on what capacity. So I've only used those in a tool format. I haven't ever used it in a weapon format. I would know the difference. I've been scuba diving, and most specifically, I went swimming the Atlantic area of the ocean. And I was born and raised in New Jersey. So, with the Second Amendment issues out in New Jersey, I know the difference between a tool and a weapon, as far as, because it can be considered as the same, but it's all on the intent. It's all on the intent. Because, take in consideration hammers. It's obviously a tool. However, it obviously could be used in a different capacity too. So, just saying. It is what it is. And so, there's scuba knives, and then there's steak knives. Let's be honest, as far as this lecture is concerned. So, it's putting this out there. You even have butter knives. Let's be honest. Sure, not as sharp, but it's still good to stop, depending on who you are. And so, that's what it is. There's forks. Please. There's 4 parts. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm B. But, when people in this day and age consider a word that way, please. I haven't met so many people in person, face-to-face in person, that were hurt by a word which was the truth, as I have. I didn't think that ever was really going to be an issue. But, I learned. So, but it's not a weapon. It's just the truth. Duh. Maybe it's my common sense approach, I don't know. But it is what it is. So, during scuba diving, I got to meet a lot of people. Those who knew me in what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, the average event number, realistically, at any event that wasn't something like Uniform Fetish Ball or Exotic Easter or the stuff as far as the similarity regarding Dallas or the DFW area, those average numbers of about anywhere from 40 to 100 or so was pretty much scuba diving, as far as when I went scuba diving. And not always, but usually when I went scuba diving, once it was April or May, there was about 30 to 50 scuba divers at minimum. Realistically, in 2019, that was the small. I thought it was February. Because of the way that was. Or the end of March, in regards of the classes that were there and the people that were out there. And it was June, maybe July. And so it was weird seeing all of that. And it was as it was. And I was just, whatever it is, because that's really odd. And so maybe other stuff was known about, obviously, what I wouldn't know about, though there were these situations, and it was one of those, well, you're gonna deal with that, because I don't know what happened, but whatever occurred is whatever occurred. And I noticed the airplane that was once in that water in comparison, and it was really surreal in 2019 to go back there, because it didn't make there was certain similarities in what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle in the DFW area. So a lot of cattiness. And I've seen cattiness, especially in New York City, when it comes to the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle area. The very passive, though extremely aggressive comments where, it was weird. It was extremely weird. And so personally I just didn't get involved with it. And so if I could actually assist someone, I would do it in as discreet of a way as possible in comparison to you're doing. So there's this example in Sapphire where this couple tried to challenge me to a dance-off. And so in comparison to another situation, I went to the DJ booth in front of what individuals were in the club. Do you see those people right there? Those people right there, do you see them? They, right there, actually challenged me to a dance-off. That's right there. In comparison. Huge difference. And so it's one of those, huge difference. Not catty, just direct. Literally. Right there, right there. And so, because I'm just that way. I'm just that blunt. It is what it is. While being zapped, no less. And so, and dealing with headaches at that time. And so, the situation was as it was. Well, there were people in the DFW area, and it wasn't just one or two people. There was a large group of people in different areas as far as different events. Even though it was really one main location, there were a lot of people, not just there, but also in the Austin lifestyle scene, that really didn't understand how the swinger community and the BDSM community were on such different levels. Well, there's reasons for that. One is a big reason as to BDSM being more about education and safety to a degree, but you actually have to take it seriously, because even in the year of 2011, when I was going through the Dominant Mentor program, there was a lot of drama surrounding that, and I just wouldn't be a part of it. You know, I had heard a lot of situations at those times and people's opinions, and it was one of those, if you have a problem with the fact that I'm educating myself, I don't know why you would have a problem with the fact that I'm educating myself. That doesn't make sense to me. I would rather, if I do play in that reference, then I do play, but if not, at the very minimum, part of being a part of it is actually being trained as a DM or a dungeon monitor. So in comparison of, okay, maybe not getting to play in that capacity, but still having the wherewithal. Because one of the portions during the boot camp is actual first aid and CPR. Granted, I already had first aid, CPR, and AED training, though it didn't go over the same aspects as to the burns. And so, you know, it's by fire department guys, and so, okay. I mean, my certification doesn't ever expire, mine always is. It's just, yeah, well, that part I didn't know before. So, it was extra information, and you never know when you need it. Although the irony, as far as my Medal of Honor and project trips. Not the same, by far, nonetheless. So, I went along as I did, and a lot of people in the Austin area, whether they had issues with the fact of me being involved in the Dominant Mentor program, which it really had been because of the education part. A lot of them, they didn't like one person or whatever, and it was one of those, I'm not asking in those references, I'm just getting the educational aspects because of. And that's the reality. Though I was looking, because of knowing how I am, and knowing I don't really do that pickup play sort of thing, the reality of distinguish between whatever type and then edge play because there are varying degrees. And then if any clarifications to actually assist in those regards. So at the very minimum, while I might not get to play, in another reference, at the minimum of if there's a situation, being capable to bring that light for that understanding. And others had whatever the opinions they were. Obviously, at the time frame of 2011 and what was going on, I dealt with what I dealt with and did what I could to, as best as possible, for my daughter and my son. Outside of that, of course, though, doing what I could for my son and my daughter, being their mom. And so there were individuals who really just didn't understand in what is the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle community compared to my knowledge that my son and my daughter being minors and keeping them away from that as best as I could. Other people in those references, that is their aspects to answer for. There were people who just didn't understand. And a lot of it had to do with the facts that in BDSM, just as in swinging, you have those who are just in the lifestyle and then those who are professional. Whichever side, whether in the swinging community or the BDSM community. That's the facts. Similarly to scuba diving, you have different styles of scuba diving. So there's a little bit more because you have military, law enforcement, stuff like that, civilian recreational scuba diver, and then, what have you. My own style is my background because it's different. And I've been taking care of things much longer. So in reference to where people didn't really understand, well, in the swinging community, it's not really looked down upon as far as the generalized BDSM community. However, you have to be truthful if you have any association to the professional aspect. This is an issue between swingers that do the adult consenting lifestyle and BDSMers that do the adult consenting lifestyle compared to professionals, because that's not a lifestyle. That's a profession. And so those who are in what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, and this was an issue in New York City especially, the individuals who were in the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle, it was fine that there were people who were professionals on both sides. Everybody knew that that was a part of different levels, different types. It was when those professional ones tried to pretend that they were lifestylers, because you can't do that. Because the second either side finds out that you've ever done that professional level, well, why didn't you say something in those regards? So in a different capacity, in reference to Club Sapphire, I had my business card in reference to the books that I've offered. I haven't ever been a professional. I've been around them though. I didn't know that Club Femme was considered a professional group. I, at the time of, thought it was just a bunch of female dominants. And it wasn't until Matt and Anna having explained to me that that was considered as. And I think this was actually after the Dallas Galleria laptop situation, that it was actually explained to me that because there were other situations that had occurred. There was the Home Depot situation, which I've gone over in a prior official YouTube video, and all that sort of stuff, as well as my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com. So I've already, at that point, I hadn't been involved with Club Femme for a while. And with the situations that I could see developing in a larger capacity, especially having been in the starting point in the Austin Dominant Mentor Program and having graduated in the Dallas Mentor Program because of being capable to transfer, it was one of those, well, being in San Antonio, and as many people go through San Antonio, whichever way, I could see the importance in reference to the group that I was creating. Well, I did create it, I just didn't ever get it to start. I had to hand it off, and it was, however you handle this, however you handle it, I can't deal with it right now. And these tenets are the starting point, but it has to be specifically in these tenets. Otherwise, I can't be held responsible because I didn't get to have anything to do with it because of everything else that I was dealing with in 2012 and 2013 by that point in time. And so it was one of those, I don't have time for certain other things. I had walked away at the point in time in reference to my lunch munch brunch because of how everything was going at that point in time. And so with everything that I was dealing with, it was one of those, I just don't have the time or the patience. I can only do so much. And so one of the factors was to be capable to actually bring that. But you can't have just anybody do that, because if you have somebody that doesn't acknowledge, let's say there's a pro that was once a pro, but only randomly pros, and then gives the viewpoint that is not a pro, but then still pros every now and then, only for certain guys. In that capacity, you're not in the lifestyle, you're a pro. It doesn't matter, and this can be disputed. However, those who are similar to me, where it's supposed to be only a consenting adult lifestyle community, that is the difference. So if you pro, even if it's for one guy, that's whatever capacity up in an official capacity, that's different. You have whatever agreement that you discussed of whatever capacities of. However, because I wouldn't know, I'm not a pro, but I've known plenty, and I know how that goes. And while I have had my questionnaire that I created, because I wanted to make sure that if, because of relationship capacities, because I don't do the pickup at play, and because of the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, I didn't ever want, if I was in a relationship, the other aspect of problems. So I figured I already had done so. I would figure it would be considered hypocritical of anybody that would be considered as a relationship in that reverse to ever not. Because I've already been honest. I've already acknowledged the after effects of my head injury and all these other factors. So in that thought, it was one of those, well, if I prefer a relationship, I don't do the pro thing. So this is what my preferences are. I didn't ever allow certain factors, despite my questionnaire not having been on my FetLife original page, which that is theft of intellectual property, as well as freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And then again, to the ordained reverend aspect, you didn't have my permission to do that in that hypothetical, in those references, especially in regards of the professional aspect, because you have to give credit where credit is due, and that is intellectual property, officially. And so, again, this is why the adult consenting lifestyle community has problems with pros, because professionals think that they can cherry pick, and they don't actually have that right to, because it is considered intellectual property theft. Of whichever side. Both sides have that issue of whichever style of pro. Because when those types of pros think that they have a right to something that's not, because pros in certain ones, not all of them, certain pros think that the people who are in what is considered the adult consenting lifestyle are stupid because they think that it's a hippy-dippy sort of way. Because all they see is money. They don't actually make any human connection. And the irony is they actually seek it, and when they have someone who actually has the capacity to actually bring that together, such as in reference of both the lunch, munch, brunch, as well as the reference to whips, as far as how I was going to create it, they destroy it because they have no capacity of that common sense factor, because they only see what they only see, in comparison to ever thinking that someone from the adult consenting lifestyle would ever actually accept them, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they choose to do it that way, and then they wonder why the adult consenting lifestyle has a problem with pros, which is different than the LGBTQP community, because the LGBTQP community, they've had that in their background, they've accepted that in their background. It's usually not a big deal on whichever side up, in comparison to the swinging community and the BDSM community. Because even though both have certain capacities of certain connections with the LGBTQP community, there is not the similarity in regards of the pro. They are more, and I would guesstimate that other swingers in the supposed to be adult consenting lifestyle community, as well as the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle community regarding BDSM, it's not the same viewpoint as to the LGBTQP community. In comparison to a pro, whether in the swinging aspects of adult worker of, same thing in regards to pro in reference to those factors of, male or female, doesn't matter. And so when it comes to the swinging lifestyle, they are okay with BDSMers, as long as they're not pros. If you present yourself as a BDSMer and you give the truth as I have, where I've explained, and I haven't hidden that either, obviously, in regards to, I'm going to give the reference of Sapphire in this reference, I haven't hidden that. So then there's those situations in regards to whatever assumptions. And so while some people have obviously known far more in regards of that Club Femme thing, that's not something that I've been a part of. I haven't ever been a pro, I haven't associated with that. That's not something I ever consented to, because I wasn't ever informed of that. If I had been informed of that beforehand, I wouldn't have ever been a part of Club Femme. If I knew before 2012 that that was just professional dominatrixes, I wouldn't have ever attended one event. There's not one event I would have ever been to that was strictly a Club Femme event. At all. Whatsoever. Because of my viewpoint. However, I was under the impression, because of reading what I had seen online, that it was just female dominance. So I figured, yeah, sure, maybe there's some pros, but it's supposed to be in this capacity. And when I learned, after not having been a part of Club Femme for, I think it was like 4 or 5 months by that point, it's one of those, I don't have patience, but I already had enough going on in my life. I definitely didn't need any of that. So it was one of those, I had very much have the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle community viewpoint, which is where whips came into place, where it was, this is a way that I can do this because I have a background. I've already explained to people that I was born and raised in New Jersey. Anybody that's been to the New York City area, especially in regards of the 1980s and 1990s, obviously since then, it's known. It is a known fact. It is more accepted in the New York City and New Jersey and Pennsylvania areas than anybody in the state of Texas would ever think. At all. It is a common factor. And most people just, oh yeah, that's down the street. And it was even that way in the 1980s and 1990s, by the way. Even back then, while my biological mother would not know that, my biological sure were not nearby. If they were nearby, he would pretend as if he didn't know, I promise you that. However, that's the facts. I don't know about my ex-in-laws. My ex-in-laws are my ex-in-laws. However, in the facts of back in the 1980s and 1990s, it was known. It wasn't like it was hidden, although it was, but not really. You knew, you could just ask anybody in the area, yeah, where's this club? Oh, you go down the block, 3 whichever lights, and then on the right you turn whatever, and then you'll see a crosswalk that doesn't actually have a light. You better pay attention because it doesn't have a stop sign. It's a one-way area, but it's a weird intersection. You go down to whichever, and then you'll see this store here, and the club's right there. And so it's one of those types of situations where everybody knew in the area. I mean, those who know, those who were there in the 1980s, 1990s, would be capable to verify those particular factors. Whereas in the state of Texas, you had, by people telling you, if you read certain, I think it was the Current or the San Antonio Current, or if you got a little flyer or you went to certain stores. It was very old underground stuff. So in regards of, yes, you had that as well in New York City and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, but in the actual areas, it was not the same as in Texas. So in New York City, if you were going, unless you were an outsider, if you were an outsider, yeah, you would be all the way that is regarding what I've seen, you know. And so those who were accustomed to the lifestyle and those who knew me in the time frames, especially of 2009 through 2012, in reference to house parties, those individuals would be capable to go into, if they knew people in reference to the tri-state area especially, I would dress appropriately. If I was capable to wear whatever outfit I was going to wear, I'd cover it. I would not walk in the neighborhood where you could actually tell what I was wearing. So something like this with a tutu, if it could be covered by the jacket I was wearing, which this is poofy. So what actually would occur would be that I'd get changed inside, being respectful of the neighborhood. Somebody who is absolutely new and has no idea and is a complete outsider is going to show up in this and be ready to go. And it wouldn't matter if it was Temple of Flesh or the Sanctuary or a house event, because that's just the way newbies do it. Especially in the tri-state area, you have a certain amount of modesty. Despite what is considered in regards of New York City, especially in that particular factor, females specifically, if you show up in your gear before you walk in the door, you are known for exactly what you're known for. What you are a new person, you haven't been in the lifestyle long, you have no idea what any of the intricacies are, you most likely think you know and you don't. And so not only that, those who run those events, I would guesstimate, those who show up, and so even in something such as this, actually specifically in this outfit, not that somebody in that reference, but where you have the tutu sort of stuff, and you have the sleeves, but you have the corset aspects, somebody showing up this way without a jacket over it, that would conceal it, because there are very few jackets that can conceal an outfit this way, where it wouldn't be noticed. It's discretion. Someone showing up, and I would guesstimate whoever would be capable to, would know that those people would be a problem. They would stir up needless drama because they don't have any idea what discretion is. They don't pay attention to any of, if in reference to Temple of Flesh or the Sanctuary, don't pay attention to any of the other businesses that could be nearby, even in Sapphire, as that example, to a degree, because of the location of where Sapphire is. Somebody such as myself, which the irony to Sapphire, shows up beforehand and assists to clean and get ready because of the capability to assist in that regard and then get ready otherwise, showing up in an outfit translates to you are covered before you walk in. And you then take your jacket off. For someone who's old in the lifestyle, because you have the respect towards the people who run the business, you have respect to the other individuals that are at the attending the event, and you don't bring any attention in that capacity, because it's out of respect. Unless certain areas, and this depends on where you're at, obviously. So in New York City, unless it's Halloween or New Year's Eve or the 4th of July or possibly Valentine's Day, you don't walk around like I wouldn't walk around in an outfit like this going around New York City if I were to go to an event. People who are old guard in the lifestyle look down on that. And so people who are newer to the lifestyle, they have no idea how that actually goes. They have their assumptions, and some people think you just show up in whatever, and no, you don't. Not if you have actual respect, not only for all those aspects, but respect for yourself. Because walking around certain areas, and depending on the time as far as the sunlight, those who have self-respect, they're not going to do certain things. Acknowledging whatever in what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle in comparison to how some of certain types are. And so I would guesstimate whether in the San Antonio DFW and or Austin lifestyle regarding people who have hosted the events, those individuals would know in reference to whatever needless drama they dealt with as far as individuals who showed up fully dressed and walked through whatever areas not paying attention. In comparison to the very few that I had dated and had or mentored and attended an event with me and knew that I was not going to, I would, in certain references, I could even know that I'm going to park at the driveway, like right at the driveway edge, and I would still refuse to not have a jacket on. I would always have a jacket on, even if, and that would be the only time of an event where I'd know that I would absolutely have a specific parking spot, that I wouldn't mind an outfit such as this and any jacket. Because I'd be capable to quickly maneuver in between a vehicle and be capable to hide part of my outfit, which wouldn't cause any aspects of regarding neighbors nearby or businesses nearby. Whereas in especially the tri-state area, pros just don't care. Pros just show up in, not all, but certain types, and they just show up in whatever they're going to wear, and then they're surprised, especially in what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, then they're surprised that they're treated a certain way. Because it's one of those, because you have no respect for anybody in what's considered the adult consenting lifestyle. Again, it also goes to that intellectual property theft problems that typically are from those types of pros. And so whether in the overall consenting adult lifestyle aspects, which does include the LGBTQ in that regard, because they have seen, and it's usually when it comes to the female pros, that's where the LGBTQ peers, when it comes to female pros of whichever side of what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, they all have a similar view. Because it's usually the female pros that go and steal without any permission, try to claim that they have a right that they don't. They usually use whichever clientele that they have to string them along, and that's where the rifts come from regarding the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle areas and the fuller difference. So in the swinging community, they don't really have a problem with professionals that are in that capacity. The irony is the BDSMers in the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle somehow look down upon the pros in the swinging aspects, in which I don't personally understand that, but I've noticed that. They also look down on the pros in the BDSM aspect, so they're more equal in that regard. They're equal opportunity where if you're a pro, whichever capacity of, whether you're a swinger pro or whatever in that regard, or you're a pro dom or a pro sub or whatever you are, you don't have a viewpoint that is looked highly upon by BDSMers. The irony, mainly by submissives and switches. The submissives and the switches in the BDSM, supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle community, are the ones who look down upon the pros, whichever side, the most. Whereas the dominants in the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle regarding BDSM, they don't really care one way or another, unless they have a submissive or a switch that is yipping about it. And then they have something to say. And that's the only time they usually do. Otherwise, most, I'm not going to speak for all, but I'm going to guesstimate, being a leather dominant female, I'm going to guesstimate there are other dominants in the BDSM aspects of what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle who don't really care, just be honest. But if you're going to be involved, be truthful. So in regards of such as like Club Femme, if they were to have shown up to Sapphire and let Sapphire know that I had at one point in time been a part of Club Femme, it would be true, but it would be a lie by omission. Because if they were to tell them whatever they would tell them, but not tell them that I'm not a pro, they would stir up needless drama in Club Sapphire knowingly, because they already had whatever references regarding. So where me personally, okay fine, I've already brought up the female named Jade, as far as that's concerned, as far as what she said her name was, and whatever, I don't care. That's not something that I have ever cared about, because it's not my business. That's not what I'm into. I'm not going to go run my mouth around the club, because again, similarly to the symbolic aspects of arriving at an event, I know how to be discreet. It's common sense. I don't stir up needless drama. Anybody at Sapphire would be capable to clarify and verify that, despite whatever, and I'm going to guesstimate in that regard. So where you have swingers who already have a skittish thing about BDSMers, because BDSMers don't use vibrators normally. That's the only tools that they don't mind vibrators, they don't mind strap-ons, they don't mind sexual pleasure. They don't understand in regards of floggers and all that or other stuff. They can see certain factors, but depending on their particular preferences. And so that's where they have the issues, but you add a pro in there, and that pro will stir up needless drama throughout the entire area. And they'll do it knowingly, because I'm going to guesstimate, because individuals in the state of Texas, this is where I go back in reference to that in my earlier portions of my updates regarding my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susaneileen.com. If there were to be any pros and or submissives of any of those pros specifically associated with Club Femme from Texas, so all you'd need are Texas ID cards, those individuals knew what they were doing. They knew that in the swinging community, because of how many I've dealt with, as far as I've given some references regarding certain factors, they knew, they most likely complained as well regarding how the swinging community is. And so in that hypothetical, because Club Sapphire would charge in the way that Sanctuary and even Temple of Flesh, those particulars look down on that because they don't see any difference. They don't pay attention to the fact that a place like Sapphire is not a professional location. It's literally you pay your fee or you volunteer, whatever it is, so that way there is an overall safe location. You have certain guarantees. It's not necessarily, whatever, but you have to still have common sense and whatever, communicate, but you don't have certain similarities to going to a country club, or in certain references, not all. I'm just going to use the Cowboys Dance Hall situation for that reference in March of 2013. There are other situations, obviously. So those types, if they were to show up and they not tell Club Sapphire, let's say there was a version of the Miss Sapphire, but there's a version in the adult consenting lifestyle, but let's say it's not called that, and they don't have any idea that that individual's a pro because of trying to hide behind something, they would stir up needless drama, and yet knowingly, within Club Sapphire, because of those types. Because they view, from what I've gathered, they view swingers and BDSMers that are in the adult consenting lifestyle as stupid, because how dare you spend money to have a safe location or a safe event and not make money? Because that's just the reality of those types. Whereas in reference to the swinger aspects, they can appreciate it because they know the difference. They've been in whatever capacity of, they've been in whatever situations of, and unlike pros in the BDSM aspect, those in the swinger aspect of pros can appreciate it because they know. They have whatever background of. So in the what is supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle stuff, that is what it is. In comparison to pro in regards of BDSM. Because pros regarding BDSM, they've always slithered around. They've always stirred up needless drama. And instead of just being honest, they don't like to do so because they think that they have a right when they actually don't. Because there are plenty of individuals, I would guesstimate, in the BDSM, most specifically of the adult consenting lifestyle, they don't necessarily mind pros, and I would guesstimate when it comes to submissives and switches, that's actually their biggest problems with pros in the BDSM lifestyle. So here's where my issue would be, and back in 2012, I didn't have time, and I wasn't about to start. Though I was dealing with what I was dealing with, as you would see in reference to Leatherati, because I didn't know, nobody informed me. There wasn't anybody at Club Femme that ever said that it was only for pros at all. So if those types of females had informed whatever, or their clients had automatically assumed instead, well, that's a problem for me, because I'm not interested in that. And so not having that distinguishing factor, that's a problem. That's a needless problem in that regard, especially as how I am. And so where I made the attempts in regards of whips, because of bringing that capacity for an actual open discussion, because I would know how to actually translate it in comparison, because even though technically all five sides would be capable to utilize, but in this reference, English, because I know the actual translation. That's the thing. So this is why I had wanted to create whips where each and every was actually allowed, but in a similar fashion to the lunch munch brunch is what I was looking at doing. So if anybody at the lunch munch brunch was like, no, most likely this is what it is and you just need to give it a chance, those types, most likely I'm going to guesstimate those types of pros, didn't want to fucking take in consideration that I would actually know anything, because they just pay attention to what they already had brought forward, my age, how I physically look, and all that sort of stuff, instead of ever paying attention to my background. If those people contacted people from my Facebook page, similar as I've already brought up, those types are the exact reason why supposed to be consenting adult lifestylers absolutely hate pros in the BDSM factor. That is why they don't have respect for them, because there's nothing to respect. When all you do is leech, lie, steal, assist cheating, coveting what's not yours, blaspheming, doing things in vanity, so on and so forth, and then additionally bearing false witness, because you know if you're assisting someone to cheat but you want to pretend otherwise, this is why they may not have recognized those types of pros, most specifically in the BDSM community, how many 10 Commandments they actually break, because they want to try to claim that it has to do with business. It's not. You can't even have, in reference to the ordained reverend aspect, simply because I didn't start the whips aspect in the correct capacities. That was in regards of my books, yet again, because of being capable to do so without having that starting point, because of whatever aspects as to how my son and I wound up in Washington State, as to the Stony LaRue concert in March of 2013, after all the other sort of stuff that went on, those types of needless problems, if any, even just one, whether it's a pro or a client or a relationship to a pro, that is their fault. That is the needless problems those types cause. And then in reference to my books, as far as the Library of Congress, I have already gone over how I was going to create, and that I did, in reference to religious books. Ordained reverend, confirmed member, it's obviously already in finding a silver lining. So there is no excuse for anybody, because those are my constitutional rights, as I've already brought forward. So there is no legal right, authority, nor excuse for anybody to ever utilize my work without my permission, which I have not granted, on purpose. Same thing. Unlike in reference to whips, that goes back to the legal first name and legal middle name in those protections that I made for myself, as I already went over. Clarified and verified, in addition, regards to the updates in the ornery PSA in my journal blog on my website, www.susanmeadling.com. I took every precaution necessary. So if those types of people from the state of Texas, in reference to those types of professional aspects, literally proved exactly what I warned them not to do, because I had discussions, they tried to claim I didn't know what I was talking about. That sort of ignorance, it would have cost them everything. Because I wouldn't ever want to have anything to do with any of them. Ever again. At all. Those types of people wouldn't ever have anything, in my opinion, except for the lowest form of. Because that would be the end-all be-all in that reference. Because I worked to be capable to bring this forward. This is why my books were put together the way they were. I already explained it. I literally had phone calls about it, clarified and verified it. Those types of slithering what have yous, any involvement of, would not be accepted permanently because of that garbage. That I was literally doing what I could, but because of the stereotypical millennial type. of thinking that they know better when not even taking the consideration of. Because of whatever they have in their lives at those times, of those situations, in comparison. And yet, the irony, where would the consent have been if that's the case in regards of Club Femme, and in reference to who I was dating at the time, Patrick Kennedy, then that is illegal because I didn't consent. I wouldn't have had the capacity to consent because I'd have to be informed. So it would be non-consensual on my part because of his omission. Fully non-consensual. Because if he knew that all of the females there were pro and knew that I was not a pro, I was not going to be a pro, I didn't want to have anything to do with that sort of stuff, that by technicalities would be in those references. Non-consensual. I would not have ever consented, and the reality is he would have known that. Nothing new in regards to the stereotype of my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister. Because of that stereotypical view of where stay out of my stuff. Because of those types of people who haven't had anything accurate when it actually came to me. Other than, most likely, they knew I'd get angry. Other than that, whoop-de-doo, nothing new, as far as the hypotheticals in those references. Then there's those types of clientele in regards of where I dealt with those aspects where I personally did not feel comfortable. It's my right to choose. My body, my choice. Don't ever pretend in regards to those types of clientele that you actually are respectful in those capacities. Because there's no respect in any way, because that's the male version of a feminazi, along with the female versions of feminazis, as I've already explained. Just pure disgrace and pure disgust. Because that's the facts. This is what I was warning about in reference to the LGBTQ community. They didn't really see what I was talking about, though there are those most likely more to the old guard that knew that sort of stuff that didn't realize it would ever hit the breeders. Which, you know, it was as it was, because back in the day, the breeders did as they did. So it is a catch-22 regarding that. I can easily see where the old guard will be like, well, you know what, they knew better, so what as far as societal standards? Those breeders, they made those choices. I could easily see LGBTQ peers, I easily could, being like, no, let them be as they are, because I could easily see, especially in the gay leather aspects, where just let them be, because yes, you have well intentions, yes, they're too stupid, they're gonna learn. I could easily see that, especially old guard. Old guard. Not going into age thing. Because I know that. But those who understand the old guard. And so that sort of capacity, though, in reference to Sapphire, that's the exact stuff. So if those types of needless problems came out of the state of Texas, as I brought up during the initial updates of my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, it's the same slithering type of pros and their clientele as far as those needless problems. Because that's feminaziism, no matter what they want to try to say. Do not pretend that it's female empowerment, because it's not. In reference to the adult pros regarding the swinging community, yes, I do agree that that's female empowerment, if it is their choice. It has to be informed consent. Huge difference. Because if they choose to, it is no different though in those BDSM pro problems regarding that when it comes to the difference regarding swinging. Because if you don't inform officially, there is no capacity of consent at all, by legal definition. So no matter how any hypothetical aspect that a pro might wish that it would be considered acceptable, it's not. And this is what I warned about in regards to not just males, but females as well, because there are females that are abusive. I grew up with my biological mother. That's enough proof on that. So, and then there's my biological sister. So there's additional proof in those references. So those types that wish whatever they try to wish, in comparison, there is the condensed version in comparison of a larger aspect of the LGBTQ community in the combined factors of lifestyle and pro, whatever, in comparison to what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, whether in reference to the swinging community and or BDSM community, and the differences in regards of the pro, in regards of the adult consent, whatever of the pro aspect, compared to the pro in the BDSM aspect. That's just the facts. I made attempts to explain this, but because they had their other things that they wanted to do, and because they didn't want to listen at those times, because they didn't see any portions of, and any time that I was actually asked, when I started out with, well, you know, I was born and raised in New Jersey, yeah, you're so repetitive. Well, you know what? I would guesstimate now in the year 2022, if those pros had just shut their trap and actually listened for once and would have been capable to learn, and their little clients, as far as whatever relationships, had done the same and shut their traps, especially when it comes to certain clientele that preferred that shutting of their trap, they would have actually been capable to listen back then. But since they wanted to run their mouths as if they actually had the slightest inclination of who I am, or my background, or who I personally knew, well, here's the difference. Those who I once knew in person, face-to-face in person, when I was growing up as a child, I had from the 1980s into the 1990s to actually get to know them. Those people can take in consideration the difference to the length of time. And that's the facts. So, while that might be considered as cold, what would be considered problematic in comparison? Because how hypocritical would it ever be in any capacity? And then, yet again, in reference to my books, my copyrights, my work, my religious texts, they are not legally allowed to actually have that in reference to religion, because they can't have that without the one and only with the background, because it has to be formulated in truth, in actual truth, verifiable truth. So there's not that allowance, including in taxes, because it has to begin in actual truth if you want it to last into the longest term possible. But that requires actual truth. With the verifiable facts. So, You guys have a good day. If you have a comment or question, do be respectful and have etiquette in the comment section of my official YouTube video, because all of my videos that I record in regards of, because it's my recordings from my intellectual property, from my personal experiences, from my background in every capacity of, in regards of knowing the differences, and so on and so forth. Like my official YouTube video, again, you have finding a silver lining to take in consideration, as well as finding the. Knowing the difference of the facts, but remembering the knowledge is to the fiction. Keep that in mind as to those who would have a different viewpoint in the wishful thoughts as to the fiction book series. Just remember there's some stuff in the Finding a Silver Lining book that my biological mother. So keep that in mind in a different capacity. Personal experience matters. Go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. There's my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, books that I authored and compiled, and have not and will not give any permission for anybody else to utilize, because they are not allowed to preach, because they have not ever been taught by my requirements. And these lectures do not count, just as similarly in reference to my style of scuba diving. There is a difference. So, make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, because that in-person, face-to-face in-person, educational aspect for genuine discussions, that is important. Otherwise, you're just being lectured to. So, thank you for tuning in. Again, today is the 2nd of May, 2022. Irony of ironies, 88. If I do that correct, maybe, no, I don't know. 76. 13. Irony. I wonder, hypothetically, as to what proof in those references. And there is that, so the 2nd of May, 2022. Although, there is the knowledge, of course, in the scuba diving aspects, because there was the child swimming lessons at International Scuba in the year 2009. So that is something to take in consideration as well, because I wouldn't ever do certain things, of course. I've done what I can to keep my son and my daughter as safe as I possibly could. I've always done what is best as I can for my son and my daughter. For clarification, how hypocritical would it be for a pro to have a child, or a clientele to have a child, male or female, and ever, in any capacity, cause needless problems, especially when in reference to me, and or my son, and or my daughter. Because then, what would they have to offer at all? I don't know. I'm sure they could think of something. but what is considered worthwhile to me. That's the important aspect of. And since the reality that I did not hide, I remained truthful. Go to my website, www.seasoningly.